Hello, everybody. Welcome to this spring webinar, Springing Forward. It's it's roughly, I think in January we released 5.3, and we've been busy. Development was busy, as always, adding new stuff into the 5.3 release. And we thought, well, it's a bunch of new features and new stuff you get in the release. You could download since yesterday or the day before. In order to get the most out of it, we thought we make a small webinar. And today I have the pleasure to present together with Patrick Morgan. He's on the right or the left, depending on your layout. And many of you have not maybe seen Patrick yet because he joined the FilmLight team not a long time ago. Well, I guess it's 2 years, isn't it? And but time flies, as we all know. So he's new at the FilmLight team, but he has some serious experience up his sleeves. Patrick worked for, before he joined FilmLight, he worked for 8 years at Digital Vision also as a product manager for Nucoda. So obviously he has a lot of experience in image enhancement, image processing, and restoration. And before that, he worked 13 years as an online editor and colorist. So long story short, he knows what he's talking about. And yeah, I'm Daniele Siragusano. Most of you might know me already. I'm an image engineer at FilmLight. So let's check out Patrick's lovely voice. Patrick.
Well, I haven't been told that for a long time. Thank you very much for introducing me so nicely. As people can see, there's the flower of spring if you're in the right hemisphere. If you're not, well, you know, that's you should move. What we're going to have a look at today is Daniele is going to take us through some improvements to the scopes in Baselight, and then I'm going to do a little bit on creating IMF packages, and then specifically look at supplemental IMF packages as well. Daniele is going to do some improvements to client view. If you don't know what client view is, where have you been? You should be using it. It's going to only get better. I'm then going to do some two other small pieces, exporting marks, which is a new feature, and also improved seam detection and a feature called preferred layers. So Daniele, I'm going to leave it to you, and I'll take over as soon as you're done.
Okay, thanks, Pat. So let's jump into it because we have a lot on the agenda. I want to talk about scopes improvement. The scopes in the measurement instruments in Baselight were in the past not really directly connected to the TrueLight color space system, which is our color management system. So that means the user would need to set the color space journey in one place and then make sure he had all the right settings on the measurement side of things. And obviously we could do better. And with this release, I hope we can do better. So what we've done is we basically hooked the measurement instruments much deeper into the color management system, so they're fully aware of the color space journey you are in. And we also added a few other improvements. One, which is a long-standing feature request from many colorists, is to really mimic what an external scope would measure. That means if you have multiple cursors up or a wipe or a butterfly, then you have the option in the measurement tools, in all of the measurements tool, to really reflect what you are seeing. So instead of having only measuring the active cursor, if you have a 2x1 up and you have the setting activated, you will actually measure all of the cursors at the same time, which help for some situations like matching shots together or doing a comparison. That's a very handy feature. The main love we put into the chromaticity diagram, or the vector scope. So we hooked this one completely up to the TrueLight color space system. We added a few new chromaticity plots. So before this release, we had CBCR, traditional vector scope like representation of your color volume in CBCR. and XY. And now we have added also 2 additional chromaticity plots, one which is the CAE UV, and one a new one which you also see as on the screenshot, which is the FilmLight RG chromaticity space, which I will talk a little bit more in details about that in a second. We also, because now the chromaticity diagram or the vectorscope is fully hooked into, or is fully color space aware, we can also additionally plot some data to guide you better. We can now plot optionally the input color space of your given shot. That will change from shot to shot as you go. So if you're on a Arial white gamut shot and then on a red shot, you will see what the input chromaticities are. And you also can have the working color space. The most important one for display referred measurement, I believe, is the mastering color space, and then the viewing color space obviously as well. You can also have in all of the chromaticity plots the black body locus, which is very important for skin tone considerations and white balancing. Obviously, as a reference, the spectral locus, which kind of gives you what, for a human observer, what a physically achievable gamut might be. And also, as you can see here in enlarged mode, we also plot the mastering white point and the display white point. This is especially useful if you're working for, if the display white point is not equal to the mastering white point, which is always the case for the digital cinema deliveries, but also very common if you want to choose a non-D65 white point for your television deliveries. We also added the ability to zoom and pan into the chromaticity diagram. So if you really want to drill down into the details of your color volume, you can do this too. So let's have a look. Okay, first, before we go into the chromaticity diagram, I quickly also want to show you the Luma waveform. What we have also done is we have combined all of the scopes into one section here. Before they were scattered based on the alphabetical order, but now we added a prefix scope, so they are all in one place, so quicker to find. You can dock them on a second or third monitor, but you can also float them if you just want to have a quick look at something. Just put up the Luma waveform. So normally what, if you don't know that setting, it just goes quickly through that. Normally you will see something, the scale presented in percentage of your viewing color space, either with 25% grid tool or 10% if you need a finer grid. But very common, especially for those HDR displays. Oh, sorry, wrong. We can see, for example, if we go to PQ, we see that the scale is a little bit arbitrary, and so you can overlay also in nits. This is not a new feature, but I just thought I take this opportunity to introduce this. Yeah, so you can scale it in nits in a base of 2. That would be a stop, basically, from 800 to 400 to 200. All the way down, you can also go with a nit base 10. So you have 1000, 100, 10, and then one divider line in the middle, and then or 2 divider lines or 3. But a fully logarithmic scale, as some of you might know, is not really perceptually uniform, especially in the shadow. So we also have a nit base 10, but with some more perceptual scales. And that thing's also completely hooked into the color management system. So if you go to HLG in a display referred context, as you use for grading, 100% on a 1000 nit monitor might be 1000 nits. So you see that it rescales. And also if you go, let's say, to 2000 nit, too many color spaces here. We also draw a thicker line for your peak luminance. So the peak luminance and the reference white will always be highlighted a little bit. Okay, so let's put this back to Rec 1886 2.4 Gamma Rec 709. Yeah, now let's go to the vector scope section here. I have in this case docked this into my workspace. So let's start with the CBCR mode. Here you have the usual, I would call more like video influenced targets, like 75% targets. Just to note, the 75% targets has nothing to do with this 75% white in the SEMTI bars, but it is basically legal range targets. So in case you're viewing legal range, then it should be here. But if you see that they are shooting outwards, then that's just because you might measure full range, which I believe makes more sense to nowadays to measure full range. Even if you have a legal range output, maybe just as because many people ask me how to set up the scopes. So I think the best way is to choose the video legal overlay on full, and then to just measure the output of the graphics card. So because the optional full to legal scale that you might do on the SDI output is really just a mechanical, technical thing to encode the signal onto the wire, but it shouldn't really affect what you're seeing, because that scaling will be undone by the monitor. So my preferred way of working is set the video legal overlay to full and the TrueLight SDI to image only, and that will measure what comes out of your graphics card, which is what really counts in the end. Okay, so now let's what I forgot is you can in the CBCR vectorscope, you can turn off, if you like, that line mode, which mimics basically how a CRT vectorscope, an old CRT vectorscope would do, because it would, when you quickly move the ray from one position to other, you would see an afterglow, and this is what that line thing mimics. But you can also have a more like point cloud representation here in that mode. Okay, let's have a look on the other one. So let's start with XY. So here what we can see is, let's reset this, is basically the XY diagram. You see the spectral logos, you see the black body curve, and also what you see here are the option to include the input color space, the working color space, the mastering color space, the viewing color space, and the gamut keys. This is basically a mini color space journey just for the most important thing. So with one glance, you can see what these triangles are all about. Now you don't see really the difference between the mastering color space and the viewing color space in this instance, because we are the mastering color space in this situation is the same as the display color space. But as soon as you go to one of those Rec 2020 spaces, you will see that you have the Rec 2020, which is the green one here. That's the container for some deliverables. And then you see what the actual mastering color space is, and that's the blue one. This is where what we restrict the signal to, because your monitor typically cannot show more than the P3 color volume. Now what we can also see is if we let's say tint the image all the way, so we are not reaching actually that region which would be in the Rec 2020 container, because no display can show this. So this is also a nice way to see what the mastering color space is doing. So if I would turn off the mastering color space here, put this to none, then you would see, because it's a floating point system, we would maintain all of the color values, but then they would be clipped on either on the encoding, on the SDI encoding, or then later in the monitor. So you would grade something, you would produce values which you are not going to see on your display. Typically we don't want that. That's why we have that mastering color space. Okay, let's do this. Let's go back here a little bit. Okay, let's put this back to sRGB display. Yeah, so we can also show here, we can zoom in and we can really drill down and see very precisely what our signal is. So if you have an 8-bit, 10-bit signal, and if you're stretching the signal a lot, you will see, if you zoom in that close, you will see those reduction in bit depths. And what we also can see here is the mastering white point and the display white point. At the moment, they're both on D65. That's why they line up together. But obviously, some of you might know that the XY diagram is not perceptually uniform. That means a large change in the green corner, for example, corresponds to a smaller change in the blue side. So it's not really perceptually that uniform. That's why the CAE, I think, in 1976, yeah, we wrote it even here, came up with a different representation, which is the UV diagram. So you can click here, you have the same option, you can show the input in the working color space if you like. That's already better. So if you want to choose one of the CAE diagrams, then I would probably use the UV diagram, because yeah, it's perceptually more uniform, more meaningful. But it still emphasizes the blue region. So we find that it stretches out the blue region, especially if you have like those super wide gamut color spaces here. You can see that it's, yeah, by making it more perceptually, they basically gave up a little bit on the blues. So that's why we have another color space, which our lead scientist Richard Kirk came up in 2019, which is the RG space, RG for red green. So this is a red green chromaticity space, and this tries to balance out the perceptual uniformity a little bit better, and it's a very good space for plotting a chromaticity diagram. And you have the same options here as well. And yeah, so this gives you I think a better way. And it is, for those of you who are familiar with the XY diagram, red is in the red lower corner, green is in the upper corner. You can see that it has a similar layout, but the emphasis of the green is not so much like in the XY diagram, and the emphasis in the blue is not so much as in the UV diagram. So maybe it's best of both worlds. Yeah, you can reset the here with the reset button. You can reset the whole diagram, but if you're in a if your aspect ratio is very wide or very tall, then you can also, with this triangle, scale it so that the viewing color space is fitted inside, because this is typically what you're most interested in. You don't want to waste screen estate to show something which we never actually plot any data. Okay, these are the improvements here. Quickly also show you that feature when you have two images, and maybe we pop up the RGB parade for this. Now when we do, let's say, let's do a wide layout. Now when you wipe here, you can see that it's reflected in all of the scopes as well. If you have that option on, measure all display cursors when stopped. So this works only in pause. But I think that's very nice if you, let's say, you want to compare two colors here and see where they are, either in the RG, in the chromaticity diagram, or RGB. Okay, then next topic is the client view. So the client view, we started with this project as more like an example to show how you can access the FilmLight API. So that client view is a web-based view into your timeline, and it's designed for clients that attend the grading session. So your clients, the colorist clients. And we just thought it's a nice, interesting project to show how you access the FilmLight API, how you retrieve metadata, how you can set metadata, how you can access thumbnails, and so on. But many people liked it very much, and it was basically till this release just a grid representation. And in this grid representation, you could access all of the shot metadata. So you could freely scroll around and visit shot metadata. You could add also annotations. So from a web browser, you could write notes, and those notes would directly appear, or will directly appear, in the Baselight scene because they're obviously synchronized. And you could flag shots, and those in Baselight you can then filter based on those flags, so you can get a list of all of the shots directly in the scene, so you can jump from shot to shot, see what the client has written. In Baselight you can also answer, that will appear here as well. And it has a follow mode, so that the thumbnail will always be the thumbnail you have on your cursor, but you can also obviously scroll free. And what we also added is a high-res mode for thumbnails. So that's basically, you enable this here with the high-res mode I just showed you in a second. And this gives you a full high-res thumbnail, which is rendered on the fly. And you can also be in follow mode, or you can freely scrub through the timeline in high-res mode. And also what is nice is it's updated live while grading. So with several frames per second, we will update the frame so that your client sees always exactly that state of what you're working on in several frames per second. And in follow mode, it's not only the poster frame, but actually the frame you are parked on automatically. So it will recognize that in follow mode that you are on a certain shot, and when you're parked, it will update exactly that shot. In this version, we made it color accurate for all color sync managed platforms, which is macOS, iPadOS, and iOS, and it works in Safari and in Chrome. So you don't need to have any additional app. You can just pop up a browser, get access to the machine, and then and it works on any of those handheld devices like an iPad or a MacBook and it's fully color synced. So the colors are accurate in representation. That's already good, but I also want to show you something we are working on at the moment, and which we will be in beta very soon. And this is within that client view, we are in the stage of integrating what we call a stream. And before we go through bullet points, I just show you how this works. So for this, I will pop down my local Mac. Just move that go-to window out of here as well. Okay, so what I have here is on my local machine that a browser, so this in this case Chrome, and what I have here is a remote desktop on a Floss Baselight. So this is now a remote desktop, a no machine desktop into the scene, so that we see what the colorist sees in this window, and we see what the client sees in this window. Okay, so in the grid view mode, and this is fully responsive. So if you have a smaller device, it will scale the thumbnails in depending on the width. So it will handle landscape and portrait mode. So it's all very cool, and you can basically go through the timeline individually. So independently from the colorist, you can, if you click one, you see metadata. So if you're a visual effects soup, you can check, is it the right visual effects version, what's on with that shot. And also you can basically flag a shot. And if I press that button, just have a look here on that window here on the side. So I move this a little bit to the right. So when I press flag here, you will see that this immediately appears on the Floss machine in Baselight. This is because we can filter based on client data. So we can say, show me all the client data which is flagged, or which has nodes, or which is flagged and has nodes. And we have more things to come in this direction as well. So now the shot is flagged. And now what I can do is, I'm logged in as Daniele here, and I can enter a node. And I can say, looks good, keep on going. And here in Baselight, because I filtered it, I just need to click here, and I'm directly on the shot. I see the node here, and I can basically answer here and say like, thanks. And you can see that it appears here as well. So that's cool. But what we can also do is we can go into high-res mode. And in this high-res mode, we will see a high-res version of that shot. But the cool thing is, if I'm moving the cursor to another position, you will see that it also picks exactly that frame. So we can basically go to shot by shot, and we can see that the client view will update. And if I'm grading that shot, let's maybe add a new layer. make this darker, and you will see that it's immediately reflected in the client's view. Yeah, if you're on a touch device, you can use your for scrolling your fingers. You have some buttons here to go from shot to shot. Now the follow mode has decoupled, but I can couple again here. So this is all in the grid view. And now what we are working on, and this is not in Baselight at the moment, but will be in beta very soon, is a stream view. And the stream view basically streams an H.265 or H.264 in a color accurate way into your browser. So this is basically now a live feed from the Baselight here into the browser. So you can have a remote grading session with this. You can also see the shot metadata. And what's also nice, because we have I'll stop this here just for a second. Because we have a back channel from the web browser into the Baselight, we can do something like, for example, here a mouse pointer. So the client could go over the image and say, oh, can we do something here or here? And the colorist will see this. And if you have multiple users logged in, then every user will have its own icon with its own name on. So maybe if we just show you how the login stuff works. Now I'm using a separate browser to mimic a different user. So I could be here. That's the DP. I'm logging in and getting the stream. And now the DP has a white marker, and the Daniele has still his marker here. So we think that's very cool. But you can also, in this mode, because you have access to still to the whole timeline, you can jump from shot to shot, and you can see in this mode you also have a little scrub bar here, so you can independently to the colorist and to anybody else in a grading session scrub around your shots. That will be high-res JPEGs which are generated on the fly, so it's not playback, but you can still go here and check other things. And when you click again on that icon, you are back to the streaming mode. You can also flag shots here, annotate shots directly from here as well. And we think this is a very nice client view and client experience for your clients. You can also brand this view yourself. You can add your own logos, change the background color to pink. I wouldn't encourage you to do that. But yeah, that's the client view updates. So let's jump back to my Baselight here. So that is the improvement in the client view. So to recap, the stream mode will have a follow mode and a free high-res still scrubbing mode. You can in there also do the same client annotation, flagging metadata, which will be immediately synchronized with the scene. So you don't need to export a PDF and then get time code ranges and go through the nodes. The nodes are directly in your scene. You have a client virtual laser pointer so that you can more precisely communicate with your client. And obviously on the Baselight you also have a laser pointer. It uses H.265 and H.264 also simultaneously. It's fully resolution independent. It can do multiple bit rates at the same time for higher bandwidth and lower bandwidth connections. And also the stream view is fully color accurate using color sync supported platforms. Again, macOS and iPadOS and iOS. It will work for SDR and for HDR. So we're doing the right hooks into the color sync platform to enable devices which are HDR or EDR capable, especially now with the announcement a few days ago from the new iPad. I think that's a good thing to have. And it works directly in the browser in Safari and Chrome, so no additional installs are needed. You can join the beta program, just contact Baselight support. The hardware requirements or hardware and software requirements are you need to either have a Baselight 1, a Baselight 2, or a Baselight X. But it will also work on the Baselight Home. We recommend a workstation class configuration because you need to do it on top of your normal image processing in the grading stack, also H.265 and H.264 encoding. It will also work on Daylight, and also there we encourage you to have a workstation class configuration for best experience. And currently, you also need to have an SDI output device connected. So if you have one of those configs, and you're interested in joining the beta, then contact our support. Okay, so enough from my side. I will hand over to Patrick.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I will answer questions. If you have questions, I will answer them in the background. So I will shut up and turn my camera off and answer your questions. So please use the GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar question panel, and we will have a Q&A afterwards anyway.
Right. Well, is it? I guess it's my turn now. Daniele gets all the cool stuff, but I'm going to make IMF packages as cool as what I can. So what we're going to look at today, to begin with, is just the basics of creating an IMF package in Baselight. We've done a fair bit of work in the last version to make this easier, and what we're going to look at is specifically creating IMF packages for Netflix. And I'm going to try and remember to call it an IMF package because I'm trying to be correct here, because IMF is of course a format, and what we are exporting is an IMF package. So I'm going to just go to my first scene that I have prepared earlier, and what you can see here is I've got a workspace set up so that you can see the audio waveform view. So you can see we've got 5.1 and stereo audio, and I've got a very colorful timeline with an even more colorful picture that we're looking at the top. So just looking through this, you can see it's very colorful because, you know, that's the kind of guy I am. And what we're going to do is, this has been graded in HDR, so it would have been done on a 1000-nit monitor. The mastering monitor would have been 1000 nits. And the first thing to mention is that I've set this up in a scene referred kind of workflow, and I'm using TCAM2 as my display rendering transform. After the grade was done, we enabled the Dolby Vision content mapping using the internal content mapping, and importantly, we've set our Dolby display our mastering display to 1000 nits 2048p Q P3D65, which is what we mastered this at. So the second thing we're going to look at is just the setup of the audio. Now the audio was set up. We have two main ways of setting up audio in Baselight, and that is at a scene level and at a sequence level. So what we're doing here is we're working at a scene level, since the audio is it encompasses the entire scene. It's designed to be the audio for the whole production. So the scene audio, I've got the type as set to stems, and in here I've got the separate files: left, right, center, channel, low frequency, left surround, right surround, stereo left and stereo right. So we are looking at 8 channels here. The way that this works is that the first 6 channels will be used for the 5.1 mix, and the channel 7 and 8 will automatically be used for stereo, and it will be as two separate files. So there are 2 separate audio files that will be created for the IMF package that we're going to create. And it's important to just say at this point that the first package that you deliver has to contain everything that is required. So you can't, if you are required to deliver 5.1 and stereo, you can't deliver just 5.1 and add stereo later. Even if you use something like supplemental, which we're going to do later, that will not work. You could only do that if you're going to do a fix. So that's an important thing to remember. These files are in the correct order as well. That is important because we will tag it correctly to be in the correct order. So looking down here at the timeline, we've got our image, we've got a grade, we've then added our Dolby Vision analysis pass, and we have the trim pass. So the mastering monitor was the 1000 nit monitor. The target display for this is 709, Rec 1876 2.4 gamma 709. Just to keep Daniele happy, got to say the whole thing. And what we are doing here, our viewing color space is obviously going to be the same thing. So that is what we set this to. So everything is good. We're happy with the picture. Audio is ready to go, and everything is where we want it. So the next thing we're going to do is go to the render view. Now the render view can be intimidating on the best of days. I have, however, created some presets up here, deliverable presets, which are really useful. It's a worthwhile thing to spend some time on to create deliverable sets as well, just to allow you to easily switch between IMF deliverables or DCP deliverables or television deliverables or VFX deliverables. It is really, really worthwhile doing. I've created 3 here. I've got an SDR and an HDR and a supplemental one. So for this, we're going to use HDR. If you're doing SDR, you're going to be doing the same thing, but you're not going to be using the HDR settings. You're just going to use the SDR, which we're going to look at now. So Netflix preset is selected. This is an IMF, and the type that I'm going to do is Netflix HDR Dolby Vision. This is because we've got Dolby Vision metadata, which will be encoded as part of the MXF. If you're doing SDR, like I said, you will just use Netflix SDR. Important thing here is if you do not have Dolby switched on or enabled in your color settings, in your scene settings, this will not be available. So you will not have this option if it's not turned on. Because this is set up to be Netflix, our codecs, the audio, everything we use is constrained. So there's nothing you have to worry about. We will take care to make sure that all the settings are correct. So on the audio side, choose the channels that you want to export. In this case, 5.1 plus 2.0. So 5.1 deliverable, separate stereo deliverable, as I said. We've moved the language tab out of obscurity in the codec parameters and given its own pride of place here. And we have a whole list of languages, defaults to English. If you are doing anything in Klingon, you can choose Klingon. Seriously, it is on the list. We didn't add that, so don't ask. But it is in there, a whole list of required languages. What we've added though is a option to allow you to add custom tags. Now this was done because there are some territories where things aren't quite clear yet with regards to language and how they should be written or how they should be tagged. So we have done this on request of Netflix to allow a custom tag, and you could put the code in there and the language will be set to custom, and that will be in the metadata that you get in your file. Now on the rendering side, the render color space is going to be Dolby SD 2084 PQ, P3D 65,000 nits. So it is going to be the same as the mastering monitor. The only option, or the other option that we have, is to set this to Rec 2100. Of course, as soon as we do that, we get this nice orange warning down here that the current file type expects a different color space, and that is just, we have a few of these warnings that will come up to help guide you. Take heed, make sure that you look for them, and we'll try and keep you out of trouble. So we're going to set that back to where it should be. My title here, I just accept the defaults. You can go and change and set these up the way that you wish. I've just titled it Fuji. I've enabled photon validation. So photon is a piece of software that will check the validity of the IMF package. So we will generate that report just so that you have some peace of mind with regards to that. And then down here, right at the end, we have where we're going to export to and the name of the folder. Remember, because we're exporting a package, so these are multiple files, we're not exporting to a file name, but this is actually the folder. So Fuji 5120, and that's all good to go. So in a normal situation, I would submit this render, and the GPU accelerated JPEG 2000 renderer will take care of the rest if you have the option. If you don't, you should get it. It's worthwhile. And I'm going to close that now and show you a file that would have been generated. I'm going to just go to a new sequence and open up Flux Manage, sequence management, and going to browse to where the file would have been exported. And you'll see here that we've got a few files in our folder. So we've got an asset map, we've got the content playlist, which is really a smart EDL telling that will instruct what to play, when to play it. We've got our photon report, our picture with all the metadata associated with that, our 2 sound files, so our audio, 6-channel audio and stereo, and then we've got a packing list or package list and a volume index as well. And what I'm going to do is I can load this file directly into the timeline. And remember, I exported this as 1000 nits, so that's actually what I'm going to make sure that that's the color space that I'm viewing it in, and just make sure, obviously, that my sequence, it's been tagged from the input metadata. So what you're looking at here is the exported IMF package. Here's my audio, and there is the file that was created. So I'm going to get rid of that for now, and we're going to go back here, and we're going to look at the bad thing that happens every time you've exported a thing which is a final master or a final master or the absolute final master, is that there's been a change. Now, previously in the days of tape, you would be brave and drop something into a master. And a couple of years ago, you would have just, well, not too long ago, you would have just regenerated everything because of a 3-second VFX shot that needed to be changed. Now, what the supplemental IMF package will allow us to do is to allow fixes or changes to parts of an existing IMF package. And that means that we can replace single video clips to replace VFX shots, or we could even change the order of material without exporting everything again. So if you just had 2 shots that needed to swap around, that needed swap position, as long as it didn't affect the audio, we could actually generate a new supplemental package that would have the instruction to simply swap those or play the media in a way that those frames would be in a different order. So this will also allow us to do different language versions or regional versions with different edits and different graphics. So in Baselight, the way that we do this is we create the supplemental IMF package by comparing the master scene, which is what we've just exported from, with an updated scene to determine the changes. And only the updates and changes are exported in the new IMF package. So this is what we call it the master scene workflow. And what you require is the original master scene. You will then make a copy of that scene, and you will make the required changes in that scene. Now, the reason why we prefer working this way is it minimizes possible mistakes, especially if you've got stuff like Dolby Vision. You have to replace not only the media, you have to reanalyze, probably change the trims a little bit. So it really is worthwhile working in the master scene if you've got that. The other thing that we're going to require is, of course, the original IMF package that was exported, because that contains all the data about the original export. Now, if you got audio to replace, we would always recommend that you replace all the audio. So we can't just add a single channel into a 5.1 mix, for example, anything like that. You will re-export the 5.1 completely. If, of course, there's a change in length, then you're going to be doing both the 5.1 and the stereo, and there's nothing more you can do about that. So some pictures, and then we'll get back to Baselight. This is just to show you we have the original master scene over here with the analysis and trim. We then have a copy with our new shot, and we have the difference between the two scenes. So in the new supplemental IMF package, that is all that will be required to be rendered. This is slightly more complex. Over here, we've got some new material at the front and at the back, as well as in the middle. So we've got new audio, so we've got replacement audio and new video with new analysis and trim, and that will be what is required to make the new package. So let's go to the new package that we have. So this is a second scene. It's a copy of the original, and because we're proud of who we are, we've decided to add a FilmLight, some FilmLight branding at the front. And Daniele has requested that we make the animals black and white because it adds an air of tension, apparently. I like mountains, so I've extended the final shot so that we have got a little bit more mountain grandeur. And what we've got then is, right at the end, is a picture of the Blackboard 2. And once again, if you don't have one, you should get one. They're very, very nice. So I'm going to take this, which is my changed scene. I've also got new audio, and the reason for that is obviously it's slightly longer, so I've replaced that. So if I go back to my scene settings and back to my scene audio, you'll see I've also replaced actually the center channel with one that doesn't have any phasing problems. So I'm going to close that down and once again head to the render view. Now choose my Netflix supplemental preset, and you'll see it looks fairly similar, but at the top here we've got our type set to supplemental Dolby Vision. And we now have a space for a master CPL, so that would be the original IMF package that was exported. The master scene, which is obviously the one that we had just before. And then down here we've got video, audio, and render, same as what we had. The one difference is that we have the option here to create new audio. So this will allow us to replace all the audio in the scene, which is something we need to do in this case because the audio is longer. But you can also, you will have the option to only replace 5.1 or only the stereo if that is an option, if you only need to replace audio and there's no difference in the scene length. So to begin with, we're going to go and find the content playlist for the files that we just created. And that's that over there. Now, the content playlist contains information about the render format, the color space, the codec, the amount of the audio, as well as the fact that it's Dolby. So this will set all the important settings to be correct. So this will make sure that the CPL or that the supplemental IMF that's being exported now, IMF package, will match the original one. I've already selected the scene, and something you always got to make sure of is just to make sure that the scene that you're comparing to has been saved, because we don't want any undo data kind of hanging around. So we've got our master CPL that we exported, our master scene, and we got the new one that we've created, and I'm going to just compare the two. And we've got a little scene difference dialog that pops up. You can copy this to the clipboard to send it to your boss to prove that you didn't mess it up. And in here you can see we've got 88 frames to render in the beginning. We've got these frames to render here in the middle, which is the animals, and then at the end we've got the logos. This will tell us the identical frames that we have between the two packages, and then the corresponding frames in the master. So this is because, you know, there's obviously been a shift between the two. And on the audio side, everything needs to be rendered. So once we're happy with that, make sure that we've got a different name for this. And the way that this works is, as long as you put the two versions in the same main directory, they'll be in separate subdirectories, but we will be able to find all the material that is required when you load the new CPL. So in the same way, if you need to do a third version or a fourth version, what you would do is always use the newest Baselight scene will be the master, and the newest CPL will be the CPL master. So you're basically building on top of the last one that you created. So same thing with the render. I've obviously done this ahead of time. So I'm going to go to my clean scene again. And this time I'm going to just go and have a, just to show you very quickly. We looking at here, this is what was generated. So we've got the logo, we've got the animals, we've got the majestic mountains, and we have the logo at the end. So that was all that was done, apart from the audio as well. So no extra video. I'm going to load this into my sequence, and you can see we have a single package with the logo at the front, dangerous black and white animals in the middle, some mountains, and our logo at the end, and we got our new audio. So that is what IMF packages, or what supplemental IMF package is about being able to make changes and upload those, deliver those, and just make life easier, because you don't have to do everything from the beginning. We got two more things to look at. The first one we're going to have a quick look at is scene detection. that's been improved. And yes, people still scene detect. It's the rumors that scene detection is dead have been greatly exaggerated. It's used a lot. There's a lot of people who use mixed down workflows and all that kind of stuff, and restoration, all kinds of things. I'm going to just switch my view back to standard view here, and I'm going to show you what I think is quite a neat trick as well, or a neat tip with regards to working with scene detection. And what I've got here is just the way that I've set this up. I've got 3 cursors. I got 5, 6, and 7. I'm going to put this on cursor number 6. So what I have is the middle frame, the frame ahead, and the next frame. And you'll see what I'm going to do with that. What I'm going to do next is to show you the scene detection. So the scene detector is now a view. It's been upgraded to have a view of its own. And if I go to scene detect, we have a new little box. And we have added the option to have a minimum shot length. So you can put in there 10 frames or 25 frames if you're doing something with lots of flashing lights. You could tell it, listen, if what you detected is a cut and 5 frames ago you had a cut, then I don't want you to add a cut over here. We can also, we'll try and detect fade transitions, so fade to black, fade to white, and we'll try and add some cuts over there. The advanced settings are hidden behind a little drop down because we think the settings we have are really good. They should work in a very high percentage of material. Probably the only thing that you might want to change very little is the pixel threshold. And we've got, if you click on the question mark, we've got some text that you can read about how it works. And you can do that instead of just dragging the slider around and hoping that something good is going to happen. But like I said, you should be able to just do it with changing the pixel threshold if you need to change anything at all. So with that said, I'm going to do one of those dangerous things, which is I'm going to do it live. I'm going to just select the shot that or the scene that I've got, and I'm going to hit start. And you'll see that we are crunching through and doing the scene detection. The red lines you're seeing is the scene detector being unsure of itself and covering its bases. So really just saying, I think there might have been a cut, but I'm not going to put in a cut in case there wasn't a cut, and I don't want you to be angry. But there's a mark if you want to check it out. Now I know this material, so I know that it's pretty good. So what I'm going to do is close the scene detector now, and I'm going to just get rid of all of these. So remove all marks of category scene detect. And what I'm going to do next is go to the front over here, and I'm going to set my display to a 3 layout over here. And because my cursor is set up with single frames, what I can do now is I know that the first frame here should be different from these two. These two should be the same. This one should be different. And I can quickly move through and just check if everything is good. Now, normally I wouldn't even do this. I would probably just start working. And at the point where there is a problem, I would just do a Control K and join the scene up, or do a Control K and add a split. So, but this is quite handy. I wonder if there was one there. No, it's all good. This is quite a handy way to work. But something we have added was asked for by quite a few people, was the ability to, if there was something wrong, to be able to select all of those, ensure that you're on a cut, and if you hit Command K or Control K, we can remove all the cuts in one go. So that'll make life a little bit easier for people who do this kind of thing regularly. So that scene detect, it can be a very important part of your workflow. And if you have a good one, it makes a very big difference between how your day ends up. Almost done here, so we're going to move to marks. Once again, something that's been requested a few times, and what I have here is a scene that should look familiar and a phrase that might look familiar. Can I have the comments as a list, please? Now, what we've done is, if you've added any kind of marks, whether that be a timeline mark or a scene mark, a sequence mark, we have got some categories here where you have some notes, and also in the very cool shots or a client view, we've got some material that was that a client commented on as well somewhere at some point. And what we're going to do is go back to the shots view, and in our little drop down here, we've got an export mark and shot data button. And what this will allow us to do is to very simply, it's a very simple little interface where you can choose what you want to do. And this will export a text file, tab, or comma delimited. You can choose to only export the shots with marks, which is what we're going to do. Export times as frame and time code. We're going to add a scene name and headings. And then this is all the kind of data that you can export. We've got extra things in here like file names and container names, strip names, tape names. All we really want to do, though, we just want the marks. So we're going to select our marks, categories, notes, 1 mark per line. Seems to make sense. And if you want to, the actual where the mark is in the source material as well. So not only where the mark is in the on the timeline, but if it is a mark that's been applied to a piece of video, it'll actually give you the source timecode as well. And what we'll do is we'll automatically add the CSV extension, and I'm just going to export that. And if I go back here, and what I'm going to do is just to load up the marks. I'm going to open it, sorry about that, in numbers, very good. And over here, you'll see there's marks 2. We've got the name of the scene, and then our mark number in frames, in time code, the category, the note that was made. And if you use client view to do this, who said what when. So this is an important thing. If you've got multiple clients making comments, this will tell you when they did it, what time they did it, what they said. So, you know, it's a very handy thing to have to give to assistants, to give to producers, to give, you know, just to make sure that you've kind of covered your bases, that things have been done correctly. And just to show you as well, you know, we do have the reports view, which is of course also a very, very useful tool that'll allow you to create, you know, very easily create comprehensive reports based on the shots view. That is also a tool that's available to you. The reason why we added this was just, you know, so many people wanted a quick way to get some marks out to people to do some work. So the very last thing I have, very short, very often, you know, we add things, and for the small percentage of people who actually read the release notes, I can tell you, really you should. There's some good stuff in there. Very often miss things like this. And what we've done is we have a lot of customers work with layer numbers, so they work with particular layers doing particular things. So layer 1 will be skin tones, or will be layer 2 will be sky, or layer 3 will be background, or whatever it is. And very often what you want to do is very quickly move from one shot to the next, make a quick change, and you want to be sure that what you're looking at is tool that you want to affect. So what we've done is, in the cursor mode, we've added an extra tool to the strip selection button here. Normally, strip selection is on auto select, but what we've done is we've added a little layer here called preferred layer number. And when you switch it to that, you can add the number of the layer that you want to use, or that you'd prefer to go to. And when we step through the timeline, it will always go to layer 2 in this case. In the case where there is no layer 2, it will go to the next or to the closest layer to that. Now, of course, part of this would be confidence, to know that what you're looking at is the right thing. So we've added a little dot here, which is available through via the counters and the counter menu here. And you've got the preferred layer indicator, and you can go and change the color if you want to. So you can go make it something fairly innocuous, maybe something like that. And you can go and make it bigger and smaller as well. And the idea behind this is just really to give you a very small visual indicator that the layer that you're on is really the one that you expect to be. So you'll see it goes away when we don't have a layer 2. Now, this might not be something everybody would use, but if there's one or two of you that think that that's a really cool idea, then I feel that I've done my job. I think that's it, really. Daniele, this is my first time, so I don't know. I need to press. I don't know what buttons I need to press.
You're doing a great job.
Very good.
You're doing a great job. Yeah. So all good. Yeah. Thanks for that, Pat. I think it's really shows many cool improvements. Especially, I think the supplemental IMF support will help a lot to directly finish out of Baselight, and also the scene detect works. I've tested it also extensively. It's very cool. Yeah, so let's go through some questions. We had many questions, so I was busy typing and answering lots of questions. I pick out a few which might be interesting for the whole group. Bob asked if I add bars to my timeline, they always show up as 100% in the vector scope. They go beyond the boxes. How can I set the chroma of the color bars to 75% so they are correct on the vector scope? So I tried to explain this at the beginning. Those targets are literally hard-coded legal range targets. So if you are not outputting legal range, then you will go over that. But that's not a problem. Those targets come from a time where we had analog video signals, and the engineers would need to because on line damping or transmission damping, the primaries would shift because of damping of the signal, and they would use this to realign, to regain the signals. But nowadays in digital signals, I think it's an obsolete thing to look at. So either you just output your scopes in legal range and then measure also image and output, and then they just will fall into the targets. And if you're measuring always full range, like what I do, then you just don't bother. I hope that answers that question.
It's how the new kids are doing it, Bob.
Then I completely forgot in the client view, a very good question for Michael is, does it encode the audio output in the stream mode too? Yes, it does. Of course, I forgot that. Yeah, so you will get audio as well, or it's embedded into the H.265. So if you already have a mix down or a rough mix, it will be streamed into the client view as well. Then going over a few other questions, there were a few questions regarding how to access the client view. So does it only work on the local network? In the first beta, we are not going to solve the network infrastructure, because we know that it's very complex network and security infrastructure. And so that's also what the beta is all about, to see what is the best way. So in the first beta, you will need to set up a VPN to your client as well. So it will be a little bit more IT overhead on your side in the beta, but for the final release, we want to sort this out so that it becomes very simple to set up a client session over the internet. Maybe one for you, Patrick. It's just 2 words. The one is floss and the other one is a number. +8. Probably someone already has seen some release notes regarding some underlying changes in Baselight. So maybe you want to answer this?
I can. Floss got nothing to do with your dentist, so it's nothing to be afraid of. We are in the process of working with and testing Floss 8, which is the long-awaited upgrade to our current operating system that we run Baselight on. So yeah, just to say that it is it's looking very nice. It's a nice refresh, and we are in the process of testing that at the moment, and we hope to get it to you pretty soon. So it's real, it exists, we have it, and it's coming. That's really it as far as the floss goes.
Okay. There were also a few questions about the H.265 encoding of the client view. Does it affect performance of the Baselight? Does it run in the background? A few of those. So we will use H.265 and H.264 hardware encoding. So on modern GPUs, you will not get a big hit in terms of performance loss on the grading system. But obviously you're encoding a second stream all of the time, so you it's good to have a workstation class system, but it works really good on a Baselight 1 and upwards, obviously. Yeah, then there's one feature request for all of the editions. One, will preferred layer be in the Avid editions, please? Yeah, it's noted. We'll forward that one. Yeah, and that's mainly about it. So we are really good in time.
I was afraid that maybe I'd gone too quickly, but you know,
No. It's I think, yeah, we don't want to see more time than necessary. Okay, so thanks for this. I hope it was informative. Thanks, Pat, and thanks also for all of the people at FilmLight in the background, our webinar angels that are pushing the knobs while we are talking and making sure everything runs smoothly. And yeah, see you the next time.
See you guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks, Daniele. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.